this morning on
That's a great
Columbus.
place. They have great coffee.
Great coffee. I bought Theo,
Yeah.
Theo from the neighborhood.
He's
I
like
got
93.
God bless him. He's makes my day when I see him.
Yeah,
We have to meet up in the neighborhood.
for sure.
Amanda, if you've watched this a couple times, you'll see that every show starts with some New Yorker talking to some New Yorker and being amazed that they live only a block apart and that they drink coffee at the same place.
I love it.
In the triangulate on New York geography and realize that they go to the same dry cleaner, and there we go. And then we can start the conversation. Now we know.
I love it.
I love it. And with that, we should start the show. It's 4:02. We know that 71st Street is not far from 75th Street in Columbus. And
4 short blocks.
4 short blocks, kind of like the 4 short miles between Amanda and I, Darien and New Canaan.
Amen.
And we were just talking before the call started about some of the differences between Darien and New Canaan, besides beaches. And then one of the other things everybody missed was we were commenting on how long Amanda's hair is. And she said, well, it's just one of the effects of COVID. So let's start talking about the effects of COVID. Who wants to begin? What else?
I got to tell Amanda, it looks a lot better than a COVID beard.
Oh, that is so nice. I had to shave my COVID beard before the call.
That was very considerate.
So let's talk about the effects of COVID. Amanda is having the busiest year of her life, and she's saying, how's it going in New Canaan? And I have to say the same thing. We put up a house yesterday for $1.6 million, and 8 people called today so far and want to see it in the next 48 hours. That's not something I've experienced in the last 10 years here in New Canaan. Maybe during the heyday in New York, when you put up a hot apartment, that could have been true. But we've never seen that kind of frothy demand out here in Darien and New Canaan. Right, Amanda?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I agree. I think you're talking about Mariomi, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is price and product combo. I think you priced that house very well. I saw that come on my radar and I said, that's going to sell quickly. But John, I don't know if you disagree. I think the buyer-seller sentiment spread is pretty wide at the moment. And so as we discussed, you are getting those aspirational sellers who have great product, but who are putting it on at the wrong price and watching that product sit and sort of chase the market down. So kudos to you for pricing your listing properly.
I can't take credit for it. I have to tell you that members of my team were a couple $100,000 apart. We had a range of a couple $100,000 apart. Certainly the client always has something to say about that, whether they want to be aggressive or not. But I think it's incredibly difficult, incredibly more hard to price listings this year. Am I supposed to do it on historicals, or am I supposed to project? So if I got it right, I got lucky.
I think you did.
How about you, Roberto and Mike? Hard to price things these days?
Sure it is. Mike, please.
I have to say, I mean, it's so challenging and there's no one right strategy. It's actually, ironically, I'm often giving my sellers a higher price than they may have wanted to have listed because I need to build in a cushion. We don't know where buyers are going to come in with pricing. I listed a condo on Park Avenue, and it's one of the few condos, and generally there would be a lot of interest because you might have a foreign buyer or buyers who may not want to go through a board. And I actually suggested a price almost 2 million more than where it's listed because I was just concerned that people were going to come in way under ask, and I wasn't sure, really what the response would be. And sure enough, I feel like people are just, by default want to offer 25% off the asking price, even if you're priced correctly, so they don't feel like they're overpaying. It's tricky.
So
do you feel that that's the strategy, is that if your seller wants to settle at X, you have to kind of price at X plus 10%?
I definitely feel that 10% variable is important. And it's very product specific to me.
Sure.
And I thought with that product being a condo, maybe looking at people, at buyers who are really going to look for an opportunity and maybe be aggressive with offers, looking to someone be a little bit opportunistic and ask for a big discount. In that case, yes. But as John was saying, the comps don't always tell the story.
Nobody has given me permission to build in a cushion. My mind is blown right now. What? I've been told that you got to price, fairly and accurately. Otherwise, you're going to lose a whole segment of the market. This is the first time I've heard, especially in what people are telling me that New York has got some soft patches. Really? You build in a cushion and get away with that?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, because
John, if I may, here's kind of, now I'm out on Long Island. My assistant decided to retire, a local broker. I don't do homes at all. I do strictly commercial. But she priced her home according to historical, what it would have gone for last year. Within 2 weeks, she had 3 offers and wound up about almost 20% over asking price. We have found that out here on Long Island, we've never seen this before. I've been in real estate for 50 years. I've never seen such a dissociation between Manhattan prices and suburban prices. One of my clients' daughter was down on Wall Street, had an apartment down there. She was paying $3,500 a month. When we realized the lockdown was going to be more than 2 weeks, she went home. At home, she sat there and 4 months later saw her apartment sitting unrented at $800 a month less than she was paying. So I've never before seen such a seesaw where prices are tumbling or appear to be tumbling in Manhattan, and we're out here getting 20% over ask on a property. And let's face it, Darien's a much nicer community than Oceanside, New York. I would expect that you should be enjoying the same sort of lifts. Make it a bidding war and turn it loose.
We were for a bit. I would say there was, just reflecting back, there was a moment, I was looking at my pipeline for the year back in February and March, and I was feeling really good about it. And then COVID hit and we were all told to socially isolate or whatever, stay in your house. And I was like, well, that's the year. It's over. No one's going to buy a house when their portfolio is down like 40%. And then obviously everything sort of flipped on its head. John, I don't know if you agree, but I would say between probably like May and mid-August, there was that irrational exuberance of buyers just throwing bids in. Things were going in multiple bids, but deals were also falling through because people were behaving in a very hasty manner. I've seen that cool off quite a bit. I think, it's partially because inventory is depleted more than 50%. We've never had inventory so low. And when there's nothing to sell and inspire our buyers, there's really nothing to show. So, you're getting these buyers in the city and they want to come tour, they want to buy, but they don't want to come out for 3 homes. They want all of the information to make their decision. They want to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when you can only show them 3 listings, it's just not enough. And so, I think that right now we're in a really hard spot. And I would say, if inventory was what it was pre-COVID, we'd have a great spring ahead of us. But I just don't know, because if there's nothing to sell, there's nothing to sell.
How much of your activity for both of you guys is from Manhattan?
A ton for me. John?
A ton, yeah. The old rule of thumb, tell me if I'm wrong, Amanda, because I wrote this to you earlier, was I think a third of people were coming from out of the area. A third were trading up, and from what I would say the communities around, they were trading up out of Norwalk or Stamford or Ridgefield or wherever. They were trading up into the New Canaan school systems, Darien school systems. So you had out of area, you had from the immediate area, and then you had about a third crosstown moves.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems with Darien with a crosstown move is you can't downsize into a Darien condo. So a lot of people are not able to make the crosstown move. And if you find yourself competing with New Yorkers for the scarce inventory, you might find yourself priced out of the Darien or New Canaan market. So I would say we're up to maybe 50% or more coming out of New York City. Yes. And the other 50% is crosstown moves, upsizing, downsizing, and maybe trade up market.
Is that velocity slowing?
Velocity was not slowing according to the market reports right into the fall. We were starting to see the number of pendings in August was maintained in both towns in September, maintained in October, maintained in November. And so you would say a maintain a velocity during a season when the velocity is supposed to be going down. So
one of the factors that, John, I think you talked about in some previous conversations we've had is people were, and Amanda, I'm sure you'll agree with this, these buyers were coming and they were doing it sooner than they were planning. Mm-hmm. They're coming out with younger people, so younger kids. So the school systems really haven't gotten very full because these youngsters are really young.
Mike, how many of your sellers are leaving?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I almost feel like it's changing on a day-to-day basis because it's so school oriented, you know, and for so many people, it was a matter of were their schools in session. And if not, they were choosing to stay in the Hamptons or looking in Connecticut. I have a lot of clients who felt that they were going to be out of the city and, you know, 6 months into being away, they're kind of coming back. You know, a lot of them are feeling that they miss the energy of being here. And like the idea of going into the office a couple of days a week, we're seeing such seismic lifestyle shifts, you know, I think in both directions. So earlier on, it was a lot of people fleeing and now that's changing a bit. My younger families are choosing to remain in place and figure out, so, you know, I think we're also feel encouraged about vaccines, you know, and that might affect people's long-term plan. It's quite interesting.
I certainly feel the same way. I mean, I think in the beginning, April, May, there was a lot of fear and people were escaping from fear. And now, as we were just talking before we came on, is that now there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. There's actually, there's some vision as to how we're going to proceed out of this. And I think the sentiment is different. I think the next 4 to 8 weeks could be probably the best buying opportunity, honestly, because there's going to be tremendous distress in people's minds just about what's happening with COVID. But it's soon. And my experience, been doing this 22 years, I'm sure yours is the same, is when things turn here, the next thing, it turns fast and the direction just changes. It changes. And people are like, I should have, you know?
100%. There's also something about New York where the people who choose to live here, it's almost like a drug, where if it's in your system and my son is 18, he's lived in our apartment his whole life. He went to private school here. And for a lot of people who choose to make their lives here, they sacrifice space, you know, they sacrifice lifestyle to be here. And it's almost sometimes not even a choice to be anywhere else. And there's a survival quality of being here and making it here. And certainly for many clients of ours, you know, who love the idea of leaving and have a different lifestyle, who wouldn't want a, you know, beautiful home with space to run around. But it's, Roberto, I agree with you. You know, I think we're going to, you know, next couple months certainly see a lot of interesting data, but a lot of people I think are going to stay put.
Well, something else that's kind of scary is the numbers, where they are and where they're going. New York, which was perking around 2%, is now closer to 5%. While we were on this call, I just saw it popped up, Ned Lamont, Connecticut tests, over 66,000 tests yesterday, coming back in excess of 7% positive. And a lot of people are going to be very concerned about going out to look at anything. I mean, I know people that just aren't leaving their homes at all. And that is sad. Yes. But it's going to get worse. You know, we're yet to see the bump from the numbers for Thanksgiving. We'll see that in another 3, 4, 5 days. Hey, Christmas got to be it too. And as long as they, John?
I had a closing yesterday where the house was shown one time. I had it Matterport 3D scanned. I had a tenant in place. Tenant said, I don't want to be showing this. I'm going to be here through next July. And so I put it out there and I said, not available to see it, not available to occupy it until next July. And you know what? 3 people showed interest. 2 looked at it and 1 of them bought it, and they closed yesterday. So when I got a call today from an elderly gentleman in New Canaan who said, you know, I've got some health issues and I'm not quite ready to put my house on the market, and I don't really want to go through the usual circus. I said, you know, part of what we've learned during COVID is that we don't have to show your house 50 times in order to sell it. We can scan it, and buyers who don't want to leave the city anyway want to look at your house on the computer, evaluate it, get it down to a finalist, and then maybe they're just using the final walkthrough to reinforce what they already know about the house. So
I think that's a great point. And what's interesting is how technology has leapfrogged at the same time to make it relatively easy for a whole lot of us to work remote. And I know a lot of people that just go, you know, I kind of wonder why I was spending an hour and 20 minutes every day to sit behind a desk in Manhattan when I can do most of that from here and drop in there occasionally. We're seeing that in the lack of people going to their offices in Manhattan. And I'm hearing anywhere from 2 people walking into a 50,000 square foot floor plate to others that are getting 13% of their people in, something like that. So with Manhattan, and a lot of work I do specializes in restaurants, and I've done a lot of restaurants up in Connecticut as well. If I look at those and see how the joy of a year ago, how many people had ever been on a Zoom? Raise your hand if you were on a Zoom a year ago. Okay. I'm now sitting here. We got 67 people on this call. I'm looking at 49 boxes, and you can see the people and watch the reactions. And somebody says something clever, and you can see the people react. It's nice to have that feedback. And it's better by far than phone calls or emails. If you look at the priority, it's great, but you're going to buy from the person who takes the time to stand in front of you if you're trying to sell something. But Zoom is definitely the second best thing, and a hell of a lot better than Skype or a phone call or sending somebody an email in the hope they're going to buy from you.
So
hey,
Mike,
John and Paul.
go ahead.
Hey, I just want to say this. So just to piggyback off of what you guys said. So on all my residential listings, there's always a Matterport tour, which is important. But the cool thing is I've shown virtually through Zoom a home. I bring up the tour and whatever other media as well. But I physically in a Zoom, I have the other agent on, and I have the buyer on, and I'm actually showing them through the home through the tour itself, which is pretty incredible and pretty amazing. So COVID's I'm not worried about COVID coming back, you know, because I think with, you know, like you guys are saying with the Zoom and the Matterport tours, you know, there is still a great service that you can give to your sellers and to the buyers and to the whole community to get these homes sold.
So I got lucky with one listing that way, but I'm curious, Mike, you sell $7 million places. Is that still true?
So does Roberto. We do everything. We're happy to take a studio rental or a townhouse. We have got to keep the lights on.
Can you sell a $4 million or a $7 million using Matterport and technology, or do they ultimately still have to go see it, and it really hasn't changed because of COVID?
Well, it's interesting. I'm curious for Roberto's opinion as well. As I've pulled back from Matterport when, you know, March and April were coming around, and of course things changed overnight. I was having you know, Matterport tours on all my listings, and of course I was very critical, because we were not permitted to show our listings. I've since stopped, you know, now that we of course are able to show in person. I've been afraid that it's showing too much, and you never know if you're going to turn someone off. You know, we always like to tease them and, you know, show just enough, but very few homes could live up to the standard of every corner and nook and cranny. Yeah. We like to show the best, you know, the best features, and it's our job to, you know, highlight those features. So I actually am concerned that I may have turned people off where they saw, you know, some of the crevices that didn't photograph as well. I mean, you really need to be perfect to stand up to that technology. So I've since put that on hold. I will then do them on request, but I prefer not to. I like a more cinematic film. Sometimes we'll do like a minute and a half, you know, with a little bit of soundtrack and set a tone. But that's my own personal preference.
Hey, Mike, can I just say something quick? The you know, if you still do the Matterport tour, because yeah, there are some people that may not want to do it, or maybe you don't want to do it. But if you still do it, I just feel like if those people are interested, it's a great tool to send to them afterwards. And I just like for them to obsess over the property even more, you know, because that dollhouse view, if you have a multi-level property, really does it really creates like this emotion to the property that I've experienced with these buyers time and time again. So I
don't disagree with that, with Mike saying maybe you have it such that because you want to engage that buyer and have that dialogue with them because you can talk them through certain aspects, but to have it sometime someone will look at it so many times and they'll look at the separation of paint on the floorboards and things like that, say, you know, it needs a lot of work where it really just doesn't.
Yeah,
that's right.
But let's back up a sec. I was using technology before there was Google Earth, much less Street View, much less Matterport. Go back to a thing called Keyhole. And what I realized with Keyhole is you're not going to make the deal on Keyhole. Ultimately, you got to go there. But what you do is figure out what I don't have to go see. And that saves our time. Let's face it, as brokers, we do not get paid for most of what we do. So if we can separate the wheat from the chaff, figure out what people don't have to go see, that when we go out and get in the car and go someplace, we have a much higher batting average.
I think this is buyer profile dependent because the vast majority of my buyers are first timers, and it is really scary to buy a house sight unseen. It's scary to buy a house after having seen it once. I've done it. I've put offers forward during inspections. I've watched, you know, one or two buyers get cold feet. And personally, you know, obviously I think we all feel our reputations are really important to our business, but I'm not comfortable giving that buyer that extra push if they're feeling uncertain, because, you know, that affects my pipeline for years to come. So at least from what I'm seeing for first time buyers, you know, you can Matterport, you can, you know, do all sorts of, you know, video tours. I've done FaceTime tours, but you're buying a house and you've got to touch and feel and hear. And that's, I mean, again, maybe for a more experienced buyer, that's not the case, but that's what I'm seeing from mine.
I'd prefer not to rely on Matterport because if I'm there showing the house in person, and I think I'm pretty good at showing a house, I can curate the experience and I can then give feedback to my seller. They spent 15 minutes because they were on to the next one, or they spent a good deal of time in the house. They focused on these rooms. And if I'm a good agent who's been trained, I know, you know, what to say in each of the rooms. I know how to pace it. So I get good feedback and I can pace the experience and do a good job with it. I lose all control with Matterport. So somebody writes, Paul writes, is Matterport better than MLS, One Key, Zillow? Matterport is impersonal, just like Zillow. And I'm not in control of the experience, just like Zillow. So
and also, John, to add to what you're saying, we're in the relationship business, you know, so we want clients who are going to hopefully repeat and refer friends and family. If someone buys a home that may not have been what they expected and they relied on us to give that tour and they weren't in person, it affects relationship. We want them in person and to, you know, see what the neighbors' homes look like and, you know, evaluate so they can make that decision on their own. You know, it is, as Amanda said, it is so personal. We may love something and think it's a perfect home, and it could, for whatever reason, just, you know, have an off quality to that buyer, and we won't even know how to predict that. It's sensitive.
That leads me to something that John and I were talking about. When Mike and Amanda, I have a question. So if you come into an apartment that needs, whether it's an estate apartment, let's just say it's not an estate apartment, because that's a whole different situation. You have an apartment that someone renovated 20 or 30 years ago, and they still think that it's renovated, but it really needs work, and it really is not, it's not ready to be shown. How do you manage that conversation when you know that they're resistant to do anything, because I've gone into situations where it's like, I really don't want to offend this person. I want to be straightforward. And I've either, in several situations, I've either offended them by being too honest and saying, we need to really, revamp this, or I've not said enough. And then someone else has come in, and when the listing comes up, it's amazing. I was like, how did they convince these people to do this? So how do you manage that conversation? I know that it's personality driven with the people, but what is your first approach there?
I wait until we have the signed exclusive. Number one. And then I say, I would say 99% of the times when I list something, I have my handyman come in that the seller pays for. And I say, we have to do touch-ups. And it's usually $5,000 to $10,000. And it could certainly be $1,000 or $1,500, but we redo grout lines. We do paint touch-ups. Sometimes, we're finishing a floor. I pay to have the windows done. I feel that it's a reflection on me if the apartment does not look like it's somewhat pulled together when I'm ready to bring buyers in. Not an estate. And of course, we have exceptions. And I have apartments with plaster falling down from the ceiling for one reason or another, but that's not the standard. But I really require that sort of touch-up. I wouldn't mind a touch-up myself. I feel like we could all use a touch-up once in a while, but I think all homes need that. And I do sometimes say it in the pitch, but honestly, it's something that we may have to ease into a little bit down the road, because when you live in a home, you really don't see it the way outsiders see it, and we get used to things that, and it's not even there, they may not even have a blind eye, but you just sort of, you get used to things. And
of course,
so
it's the seller that's like, you say, the bookcases, they're like, don't you love them? I did them myself. And you're like, yeah. I can't touch that.
Yeah. It does depend on the seller. We had a pitch recently in Darien, and the home was beautiful. The house was built by the owner's father who had passed. And it was, the quality of build was stunning, but some of the decor choices were a little bit outdated. And as we know, I think it's the same in New York, buyers like clean and white and marbly and, shiny and whatever. And this wasn't really that. And so that was a very difficult conversation. And I basically showed this client examples of homes that had been on the market with one agent in town, had not sold, and then changed hands. And I showed her photos of the homes, and I explained how, the home had sat, it expired, a new agent took it, they staged, the home sold. This is a true story, in multiple bids, day 2 on the market. And it was a Halstead agent. So I showed her a few examples of that. And I reminded her that, this isn't my personal feeling. I love her decor. I love a natural wood, even if it's a little bit orangey in tone. It's not up to me. It's not up to you. It's not about us. We need to think of your beautiful house, while it's sentimental to you, as a commodity in this instance. If you want to sell it, this is what we need to do to sell it. So I don't know, it's sort of driving a hard angle there. It's much easier when we have another listing coming on that'll be priced just under $4 million in Darien. And it's a beautiful house, and the sellers are wonderful. They're like, what should we do? How do we stage? Where do we get started? And that's like kid in a candy shop. I'm like,
oh,
yes.
God, we love those.
Right? It's the best.
Yeah.
Makes our job easier.
The best customers who are the ones who know what they don't know.
Amen.
And respect us for how we can help get them where they need to be.
I am learning so much in this hour. Let me just say, first of all, Mike, you are in a class by yourself, Mike Lubin. For those of you who don't know, Mike Lubin is like top 100 in the country. So when Mike Lubin says, without missing a beat, that he has no problem adding 10% to the price of the house.
Case by case.
Case by case. But in some cases, he's like, oh yeah, we can bump this by 10%. No problem. Signs the deal. And it says,
depends on the market.
By the way, we're going to need to do a little bit of touch up. $10,000, I think you said, touch up. Wow.
Sometimes.
$10,000.
Look, in our business, timing is everything. Timing is everything. And the reason I was saying about inflating the price is all of my buyers right now are coming in 10 to 15% off the asking price.
No, I get it. What I'm learning is I got to think big. I gotta stop being nervous about bumping it up another $5,000 on the price and saying to the client, you need to spend $10,000. You could leave it and take your chances, but you're going to make your money back spending the $10,000 on.
Let me tell you something. Sometimes it's buying new appliances. You know, that 10,000 could be 100,000. And I'm generally very open and I'm careful, I'm sensitive, but I'm pretty straightforward about, we need to do this. You know, we've got to rip up the carpets. We've got to put in new appliances. I never say renovate. And people often ask, should I put in a new kitchen, new bathroom? Absolutely not. But sometimes, yes, refinish floors, new appliances, paint. And it's, as I said, 10,000 could be 100,000, if not more, or even just mean you now get an offer.
After the exclusive is signed.
After the
once it's signed, trust me, in the pitch,
you're not shy.
Beautiful part.
See, Mike comes with a theme song. He comes in and it's like you hear 007 or something.
So, Mike, are you on a team? Are you on a team?
No.
All by yourself?
I have an associate who works with me.
So you Daniel. Have to be the good cop and the bad cop.
Yeah.
Back and forth. Okay. And Amanda, you bad cop or good cop?
Oof.
Back and forth.
I don't know. I think I'm a little bit back and forth. I'm mostly bad cop, unfortunately. Blessing and a curse, weakness and a strength.
Okay.
I think one thing that I do sometimes when you get to that level is saying, do I have permission to be brutally honest? And when they give that to you, tell them what they need to hear.
I think that I play the bad cop quite a bit. I think that my wife, who I work with, is a more sympathetic ear, and they talk about how they feel about the process, and they talk about how she feels about the house. And I am not known to be so warm. I am just not that warm. And so I will be sort of the analyst, and I would call that, in this context, the bad cop. I will say, I really think we have not maximized our potential on this house, period. And if you want my honest opinion, I really think you need to clean up that these three areas need, are going to be a problem for you, and we need to address them. And I think, the return is there. I don't know if you call that a bad cop, but I am that unvarnished, dose of reality. I wonder how you guys do it if you're not working on a team and you can't sort of talk this through among a group, because then you might look like one person with just one opinion, and they're like, yeah, well, that Mike, he doesn't know so much. My friends think my apartment is just fine. I
think the key with that is, I think as much of our job is selling, I think it's equally listening. And I think good brokers tend to be good listeners. And a lot of sellers don't have the emotional bandwidth or the financials, or they're too sentimental. They may not be capable or open to doing any work. So I think we have to be sensitive about, is this a realistic conversation? Did their partner pass away a year ago? And the idea of, editing bookshelves may be overwhelming. I sold an apartment last year. The gentleman, he passed. Unfortunately, he was 98, from Italy, and the most charming person in the world, and a travel writer. He had a parrot in the living room and these plants everywhere. He'd been in this apartment for 40 years. And every other broker told him he couldn't be there for showings, and he had to remove the plants from the windows because the plants literally had grown over all the windows in the living room. And I said, first of all, you're absolutely staying home. This is your home. And if you need to be here for showings, there's no problem with that. And no, we're not removing your plants from the windows. You've been growing these plants. They're your babies. And you know what? That was the right strategy. We sold the home, and I wasn't telling him what he wanted to hear. It was exactly the way we needed to sell it. I was not going to have this man wait in the lobby in a bathrobe. This was where he and his wife lived for all these years. So we have to read the situation for what it is. And
had you removed all that stuff, let's just say you had ideal situation. He was like, yeah, sure, I'm going to leave. You're going to be able to do all this. Would you have gotten more for the apartment?
No, the person we sold it to fell in love with him from the first showing. He was in love with them. They were in love with him. Everything was about the story. And they actually paid it was a very good price that we got for it. And it needed a full renovation, but people came in and they fell in love with the story. And he was part of it. So it's part of why I love what we do, is that every situation is totally unique and you have to know how to adapt to it.
All right,
that's a great story, Mike.
I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about the market. We talked a little bit earlier about how Darien and New Canaan are doing just great. And we also said that most of our customers are coming out of New York. We are dependent on demand coming out of New York. Is it going to continue? On the one hand, we hear there's a vaccine and the stock market is hot. On the other hand, we're hearing from Dr. Fauci yesterday that large groups probably won't be able to convene until into 2022. And when I hear that, I think that New York, critical industries in New York City are going to continue to be devastated for a year, like Broadway, like Yankee Stadium, like public transportation. So what's the outlook, Mike? What's the outlook, Roberto?
I'll let Mike go. I have my opinion.
I think from now on, we're in a new reality, and we are going to be entering a hybrid reality of people not necessarily going into work every day, and offices going from 50,000 to 10,000 feet. This is a correction. And I think in many ways for good. It means that people get to stay home with family. My son's 18. I missed years of his life, through sitting at open houses that were empty on Sunday because we did open houses, and that was just the way we had to sell things. So we're in a correction on a number of levels. I think, speaking from my own experience and clients, I think for many of the people who were already who have left the city, that was that group. And I think they've already left. I don't think there are that many people who are still here who are now going to decide, I need a change of lifestyle. I really think that the people who are here and who are going to make it work, I'm just talking about from my own experience, are here, and they're going to decide to kind of stick it out. So I think that exodus that, of course, occurred in Long Island and Connecticut and Westchester, for the most part, I feel that inventory there's going to be a shift, and we're going to see people who are in New York who feel that maybe they will invest in that, into that third bedroom home because they've decided, that my son went to Horace Mann. Horace Mann hasn't shut down. They've decided to figure out how to make it work. Several other schools have done so as well. So I think Roberto and I are going to see a tightening of inventory. We're now at multiple, we normally would see a 6-month absorption rate. I think we're close to 2 years. I think we're going to start to see that inventory level dry up. Wow. And we're going to start to see, we're already seeing it. The deals are happening at significant numbers. Last week, Donna Olshan, who's such a superstar, she publishes the Olshan report. We had 27 signed contracts last week at $4 million and above. So it was the first time we reached pre-COVID volume of 4 million and up contracts. It's busy here at all price points.
And as I've said, I because there's that light at the end of the tunnel, and I feel that people are feeling more and more comfortable, and that they come spring, summer, they're going to want to be situated. Like Mike had talked about, it's very school driven, that they're going to try to be situated and in place for the following school year. And I think that next spring and summer are going to be extremely busy. Also, I do believe we've had all of the everything that's come back so far has been domestically driven. We've had no foreigners whatsoever. Yeah. When they start coming back, that's just a whole other category that's going to create demand. How do you feel about that, Mike? Do you have any foreign 100%. Buyers now?
I don't. And let me tell you something. A lot of them I have buyers in Europe, I have buyers in Asia, and they want to know what's happening with inventory. They're excited to see new development. For so many years, to get into a new building, you had to beg for an appointment, and you had to pay transfer taxes, and you had to ask 10 times, can you come in at 12? They're courting us. How wonderful is it going to be a buyer when you're ready to come back into the city and look at buildings that have, they're 10% sold, 20% sold, where they could choose any line or any floor, where prices are negotiable. It's going to be fun to be a buyer again. And it hasn't been, again, like I was saying, it's a correction. This isn't the worst thing in the world to see this shift for buyers to feel like they have options. I think it's an exciting time, to be honest with you.
I work in the high net worth insurance side of the business, and a lot of the activity we're seeing is, yes, new homeowners, but we're also seeing a lot of our clients buying second homes right now. So that is a big trend that we're seeing. I would assume you guys are seeing that.
People want lifestyle now. We all realize we've all sort of with this year and with being faced with health and mortality and issues. We want to live happy lives. You know, we want to be closer to family and grandchildren. We want to be in the sun if we love the sun, or we want to ski more. People have regrouped and I think they've taken a hard look at what life do I want to be living, you know, because I think we all have just a much closer reality of it's day by day. And we can't take things for granted. And if it means having a second home or a beach house, or if we love skiing and maybe gets a condo in Aspen, I think people are really looking more closely at what will make them happy and what choices they want to decide on.
I feel like across all markets, New York, Florida, Connecticut, New Jersey, wherever, it doesn't matter. It's a good time to buy. Rates are historically low. They're staying low. And I would say what I'm telling my buyers, I mean, I have one client who owns in Brooklyn who needs to sell to buy and was telling me, maybe we'll wait for spring, fall of 2021. What do you think? And I said, that's all well and good. But if you want my honest opinion, if I were a ready, willing, and able buyer right now, I lived in New York, I owned a place, I would sell it right now, because right now New York is doing okay. And I don't know what's going to happen if New York real estate shuts down again. And I would come out to Connecticut when we have this glimmer of a window where like maybe prices are a little bit negotiable because it's between Thanksgiving and our spring market. And I mean, inventory is down and buyers are sort of quiet and taking a back seat. That's when I would buy. That's John, I don't know if you agree, but I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
So Roberto, you're a New Yorker and you love New York and you need to be in New York every day of your life. So when you're thinking, you know, there's a buying opportunity, you say to yourself, you know, I could get a bigger apartment, or I could take that money and I could go get a house out in Connecticut or out in the Hudson Valley or out on Long Island. And you do. When you get out of the city and you head out to the Hamptons. I think that's what we're seeing right now, is that New Yorkers feel that they need to be able to get out. And for many of them, I have a client who bought in North Stamford, and they said, I love my schools in the city, but I don't know that my schools will stay open. And so I like the idea of having an escape valve, of being able to come out here to North Stamford and it's a weekend house. It can be more than a weekend house if they need it to be, but for now it's a weekend house. For Amanda's market and my market to be profoundly affected, we don't need that many New Yorkers to want a weekend house. We just need a few. We only need 1% of the markets to feel that way. And all of a sudden, wow, our markets look phenomenal. There's only 250 sales in New Canaan every year, 250 more in Darien. I mean, if you add 25 to the mix, our prices get affected. And that's what's happening so far. So when you say you don't think that everybody who's leaving has already left, Mike, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I don't mean everyone. I think that what Roberto and I experienced, which, you know, was a lot of our clients calling us and saying, you know, schools are going to shut down. We need to get out of the city. We're never going to be happy here again. Thankfully, you know, that has died down. I think there were people also who had 2 children and who thought they might have 3, and they felt this was the opportunity now to get that house. I don't think we're going to have that same feeling of, oh, you know, we've got to get out of the city, or you know, we're going to miss our moment.
Mike and Roberto, who's buying in New York right now? People looking for deals? What's your market?
I have a lot of people looking for deals. I mean, it's too many people looking for really good deals as opposed to really good apartments. You know, they want the 25, 30% off, and they're missing out on tremendous opportunity for amazing properties, because the reality is the market's been, the air has been coming out of the balloon for the last 5 years. So really, and then COVID happened. So the entire marketplace is really a deal. And they're just, you know, then they start looking for, you know, they're looking for something that's not, it's like really looking for a needle in a haystack, or they're looking for an apartment. It's like, sure, you can get this apartment, it's 25% off, but it faces a wall. Do you want to live there? You don't want to live there. You know, so those people there's a lot of that going on. They want a deal, and that, even that opportunity, which is the best there possibly could be. And really the next 4 to 8 weeks is really going to be, I think, the absolute bottom, because we could get shut down from showings, and people who want to buy something, where people, you know, the demand and the offers are going to be very few. So any offer that's being made is going to carry a lot of leverage and a lot of weight with the sellers. There's going to be a lot of negotiability. That time, it's going to disappear and they'll never have bought. That's just my
buyer. Yeah, I agree. Buyers want deals. We also have to be able to say to them, look, the apartments come down 10 or 15%. It may not come down anymore. It's already met you at your budget and you're already getting, you're going to be there for 10 years. You want this to be your 20-year home where you see yourself raising your family, or this is now your downsized home. We have now the ability to say, look, we've already seen a nice discount. It's time to jump in. We don't know that next year is going to continue to descend another 10 or 20%. We've already seen a nice decrease in prices. So it's actually a very good time to be buying in the city, because anyone who is selling now really does need to be a quote unquote real seller. No one's testing the market now. If you're on the market, you're on the market to sell.
Mark, I want to jump on that and support that, because like any market, whether it's Wall Street or real estate, indecision, the market does not like indecision. We know that somewhere down the road, once we get a couple of 100 million doses out there, we can now peer a little bit over the horizon and see that there is light at the end of the tunnel and is no longer an oncoming train. I'd like to think that we're going to be in a position now where it's not going to fall any further, because there's not going to be any more indecision. We have certainty that it's going to be a little worse. The biggest question we have is, tomorrow morning is the school's going to be open for my kid. I put some thought into this and had an article published about, are you ready for the new normal? So I'm going to put a link in the chat box so everybody can take a peek at that thing.
You broke up.
You muted yourself there, Paul.
Yeah, we didn't do that. I think it's going to take a long time to get back to the new normal. I'm in the camp that says it's going to take a long time for us to get through this, to work the vaccine through the economy and to open up Broadway and Yankee Stadium. It's going to take a long time for people to change their habits on riding the subways in Metro North. And I see a lot of people saying, you know what, if I've got to go through another year of this, that we have some hard decisions to make. And
the only thing is, New Yorkers who are here don't rely on, we love Broadway. We love going to Mets games, Yankee games. We don't rely on Broadway and the stadiums and the restaurants. We live here. Speaking for myself, I'm ordering in most nights. I'm watching TV.
You guys all eat out all the time. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I wish that were the case. We live the same life that you do. We just happen to be in an apartment and we're cooking. I think it's the people who are coming in for their second or third home, or the tourists who rely on that level of New York being open. Roberto, do you agree? What is your feeling on that?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the people who are waiting for all of those things to come back into normal will have already lost on the best opportunity, because people are coming back. People are coming back, and for me, I honestly don't go to the theater that often. I don't go to a baseball game that often. But I absorb this city and the energy, and I'm on the streets and I'm hustling and that to me that's what New Yorkers are here for more than anything else.
I know a lot of young people,
that's what
graduates coming into the city, and they are super disappointed at their lifestyle, that because these places aren't open, these fun places that they want to go to. Certainly they're not in the market right now to be buying a place in New York, but their lifestyle in New York is not what they bargained for at all. And they're very disappointed. And those are the young people that are single and want to meet people, and you can't do that there.
I want to get more specific. I don't want to talk about the market as if it was one thing. Mike, I just looked on your website and you got a $450,000 apartment. You also have a $7.5 million apartment. And I looked at that's 450, and I don't know much about it, but I thought, $450,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City, in Chelsea, I'd buy that. That seems to me low risk. And sure enough, you already have it pending and it's going. Is the top end of the market soft and the bottom of the market seems to feel that you have confidence? Or are you feeling that, or is it neighborhood driven?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because on the lower end of the market, and I love, like what Amanda said, I also love first-time buyers, and it's somewhat of a specialty for me. They're appreciative, they're loyal. It's a miracle when things close. I can't believe you did it. You're their hero. I live for them. They make me so happy. It's interesting because the under $1 million, those are often people who they have less money. They're stretching to buy. They may not have the work history. They don't have the liquidity or the breadth of assets. So I think actually those are people who may be on hold, and it's the people who are buying 2.5 and up, 5 million. They have a nice portfolio that's diversified. So I think they feel a bit more comfortable. So I think it will often, from my experience, I think it's the 2.5 to 4 that we're going to be really busy. These are people who, have the savings, who have the 15, 20 years in a job and are frankly just a bit more comfortable, weathering through the rough patches.
I think it's better to talk in sort of population demographics than in price points in this kind of market, because I feel like, Meredith touched on the post-college grad who you would normally be, and that's more like rental market stuff. But again, just going back to our first-time buyer pool, there is one other group that is deeply affected by quarantine. And I think I'm speaking for all of them because I have 3 kids under 7. It is the young parent. So being trapped in an apartment with an 18-year-old actually sounds lovely, assuming he's relatively clean and not smelly. But, and in my experience, that's not the case with boys, but, for me personally, picturing being trapped in an apartment, a husband, fine, but like 3 kids and au pair, or even 2 kids and no au pair, that is traumatizing. And that is what I'm hearing. And then, so here's what happens. We get those guys coming out to Connecticut. And in some cases, by the grace of God, we find them a rental, which is like nearly impossible. If we do, they get a taste for space. And whether or not they love the city, I mean, when I left the city, I cried for weeks. I was devastated.
Them in, right?
Right. And then they're like, we're hooked. Oh my God, we have a yard. We don't have to go down, the walk downstairs with the stroller thing. Yes. I loved New York as a single person. I loved it as a married person. I think that my needs change. And I think that anyone who's raised kids in the city in non-quarantine times actually has a really cool story. But I think anyone trying to raise kids in this moment is looking at their lives in this mirror and saying, like, what if this happens again? I mean, like, what are we doing? We're trapped. I feel claustrophobic.
Yes, 100%. I get that.
Thus the exodus. P.S. That is a snapshot for me of why the exodus.
Right. That's that demographic. Those are the people coming out to us.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Because what I say is a lot of us are living in places that are built for sleeping, but not for living. So living with the entire 24/7 look wasn't what people signed up for when they signed on to these apartments in New York City. It's not. And then, that's my comment.
Right.
Amanda, what is your short of inventory?
Yeah, very. I'm dying.
You want anything? Would you take an $8 million listing? Would you take a $1 million listing?
No, I want my sweet spot, and I think everybody's is that 1 to 2.5. John, I was listening to you talk about how you had that listing and there was a tenant in place till July and you still had multiple offers. I mean, on the buy side, I just represented a buyer who agreed to purchase a house with a tenant in place until June and a bunch of other, hoops they had to jump through because they love the house so much. But these are experienced buyers. These are in-town movers, and I do see, I think I see some in-town movement happening, but I think the moral of the story there is we are in a vicious cycle where would-be downsizers are not inspired by anything. So they're not listing their $2.5 to $4 million houses. Those would-be upsizers who would sell their 1 to 2s to people coming out of New York and move into the 3, 2.5 to 4 range aren't doing that because there's nothing inspiring to buy in that range. And so there's nowhere to put the New Yorkers. And I don't know where that cycle ends. And I'd be very interested to hear your take on it. How do you get sellers to sell? Would-be sellers. I
think you have to start that conversation. when I sent out the invitation today for this call, I got emails from people that I heard last talked to 1 year ago and 2 years ago when they were thinking about putting their house on the market. So, you know, you never know. Some of these people may take 2 years. Some of these people may take 10 years. You know, I can't anticipate that. I wonder whether these kinds of conversations, you know, have any effect whatsoever. But I find that if we have these conversations when people are ready to listen to them, you know, they'll dive in and they'll listen. Hey, what's the market doing? You know, are we going to see buyers from the city? You know, is this a good time to move to the city? You know, am I going to get a good deal?
Send them to Mike and I.
What's that?
Send them to Mike and I.
Exactly.
You know, one of our first calls, Roberto, we talked to the head of development in the city, and he said, everything is doing fine in the city. And we said, wait a minute, everything can't be doing fine in the city. And he said, yes, builders are still building. They're just changing the product. They're changing the product around to meet the new need. There's still a lack of inventory, of the right inventory, whether it's in Darien or in Manhattan. You know, some of this inventory is just obsolete. And so there's a contractor, I think, in the chat window saying, yeah, maybe sometimes the answer in a soft market is you got to renovate and you got to bring your real estate up to snuff and bring it up into the modern age.
Anything that needs work in New York is struggling.
Yeah. Same with Connecticut, I would say. Same.
It's always been struggling in Connecticut, but I would say they're more willing to do work now than they were a year ago or 2 years ago.
Not if it's priced right.
You got a lot more speculation going on after 5 years of no speculative building, you know, in New Canaan. Now you're starting to see speculative building outside of the, say, quarter-acre zone. They were still willing to go with high density condo developments and quarter-acre zone, but they were not willing to bet on the 4-acre zone in New Canaan. Laszlo Papp on my screen in the upper right-hand corner, he's on the zoning board. Laszlo, did you get, yes or no, did you get any applications from spec builders in the 4-acre zone for the last couple of years until this year? Boom. Now suddenly they're showing up saying this is what people want.
No.
Right. And now they're beginning to dip their toe in the water and say, I think I'll speculate again.
That's right.
And I would say, just to get really specific on this, that the cheapest land you can buy in New Canaan right now is going to be hilly and rocky, is going to be $700,000 to $1 million for a buildable lot in New Canaan. And to make money on that, you have to triple your money, which means that builders now believe they can buy a lot for $1 million and sell it for $3 million, 3.2.
And how big is that lot? Half an acre?
More in New Canaan, right, John?
We have half acre. We have a bullseye, right? We have a half acre, and then we have the acre, and then we have the 2-acre zone, and then we have the 4-acre zone. Okay. And so you can buy 2 acres in the 2-acre zone, costs the same as 1 acre in the 1-acre zone.
Got it.
No, and I think there's another important thing from particularly the point of view of holding on to what's good, and that people need to know that when they move into a new property, the first thing that they should not do is make a lot of changes. They need to sit, if it's a well-designed property, they need to sit in the property and feel it for a month or a year and say, what is good about this property that I just purchased, and what works in it and what doesn't. If something really doesn't work, sure, change it. But a lot of mistakes have been made by people changing first and then discovering that what they just changed to didn't work either.
I know we're running out of time, but I see Susie Rosen in the lower right-hand corner. She was a realtor in New Canaan before New Canaan got cool. Now she's in Charleston, South Carolina. Are people leaving New York City to go to Charleston, South Carolina? I can't hear you. I'm wondering whether Susie down in Charleston is also getting the benefit of the COVID.
Absolutely. We are. They're coming in their droves, second homes too, first homes, but we're getting a lot of people from California too.
Everybody can there's plenty of room in Charleston for California and New York.
Oh yes. Well, we've got plenty of water and they're running out of water. So they're coming to us. No, it's been an interesting year. I think everybody's on the move. I think everybody's, regardless of where you live, I think everybody is reconsidering their options. And I'm listening to you and you're talking about the 7% test rate. We have a 15% test rate right now. So, it's a different world. But I miss it up there.
Are you starved for inventory?
Completely starved for inventory. But we have a completely different price point. And again, it depends, different areas, different price points. So funnily enough, historic area, downtown, not so much. That's the weak part of our inventory. We've got plenty of inventory down there. But everywhere else, we're down to, at one point, we were down to 2 weeks. I mean, it was crazy. So it depends. But
well, thank you for that perspective from down south. So it's 5:02. I'm going to let my guests get the last word, and Roberto get the last word. But I had a great hour. I thought we got a lot done. A lot was said. I learned a lot. I thought this was a lot of fun. I did just learn that there is no inventory in South Carolina. So all you New Yorkers, don't even bother.
No. We can find something, John.
But Amanda, she can hook you up. I can hook you up. Connecticut, we got plenty of room.
Susie, I'm an SOB. I used to live at 203 Broad Street in Charleston.
No.
Truth. Yeah.
Well, my office is at 33 Broad Street.
Okay, I know it well. Now, the simple thing down there is when you talk about a pre-war house, you're talking about a different war.
That's so true. So true. Yeah.
Mike and Roberto, it's been fabulous to listen to you. And particularly Mike, I got a few very nice tips from your lips to God's ears.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
Yep, agreed.
Very, very good discussions. We learned a lot.
It's our pleasure.
Thank
Mike
you.
and Amanda, thank you so much. Any
so
last predictions of anything that you think that people aren't expecting to happen in the next 6 months?
The Mets will win the World Series?
Not in the next 6 months, they won't.
No.
And this too shall pass.
I think we're going to have a great year. I'm an optimistic person. I think we're going to all feel like we could take a breath and appreciate life again and not take things for granted and be grateful. And that's the year I'm looking forward to.
I say Pfizer will buy Google.
Ooh.
I agree with what Mike said. And I also would add to that I think it's going to be a good year. It's not Connecticut versus New York. I think in many ways they are very complementary markets. And in this moment, it just depends on that population demographic. But I think New York is going to have a fabulous year. I think Connecticut will too. And, Mike, look forward to doing some referrals with you back and forth.
We would love it. We would love it.
You can give John New Canaan.
Only
Roberto and I will come to a field trip.
Love it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope you'll join us. You'll all become regulars on this. We try and do it every Thursday. And you know what? I think the market is changing so much that we need to do it every Thursday. So thank you all for being part of it. It was good.
Thank you.
Stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Very well done. Very informative.
Everyone, well done.
Thank you.